From the sun to you. Massive solar storm could wipe out internet, phones, and power grids tomorrow as rare, severe warning is issued. Warning has been put into effect by the Space Weather Prediction Center. This is from James Mools from The Sun. Yeah, are you guys getting scared yet? Are you getting scared? I'll tell you something. I know a lot of people that are actually sensitive to solar weather and like radio waves and stuff like that. I don't know if you guys ever notice, some babies are very sensitive. You drive past a certain kind of radar or you drive past a certain kind of radio tower and they get very uncomfortable. There's a huge spectrum of human biology in how that can be received. And so that's a study of mine that I thought was interesting over the last bunch of years. Because, man, I'll tell you what, if the sun is affecting GPS as bad as it has been lately, I don't know if you guys are into precision farming, but I know a lot of guys who farm. They just normal farming stuff, and most of that stuff, they have precision farming, GPS systems. But I also know guys that do aerial stuff, and I myself do some stuff with like UAVs and aerial, GPS controlled remote aircraft. And I noticed, the other day, I couldn't get hardly any good signal, even on the camera. And just everything, it seemed like it was having a hard time navigating. And it was close range, visual line of sight. And I thought, okay, maybe there's something going on, because usually it's electric disturbance. Like if you fly around, and I'm very rural. I'm not by any large electrical systems or any kind of radio systems at all. One of the reasons I like living out here. But it will affect all sorts of stuff. Phone signals for me, my internet is directional antenna. And so if the sun even farts, I know about it in real time. So I actually subscribe to what they call space weather alerts because it affects my job and my ability to transmit data through the airwaves. And so I'd like to read for you this because I find this interesting. It's going to hit tonight pretty heavy. You should see auroras at least in half the northern part of the country if you got a sky. It's what they're predicting anyways, the aurora borealis. So man, can that be beautiful when that happens. And I'm in the north part of the country, so I see them all the time. But if it's going down as far, halfways across the country, I remember one last year, it actually got all the way down to Mexico with one of those big blasts. So I'll read this article, and then we're going to talk about solar effects on the human mind in biology. That's a subject that I find interesting, okay? So, a rare severe warning has been issued for a massive solar storm due to arrive at Earth tomorrow. That would be tonight, actually. This was published yesterday, so that would be tonight. The storm risks causing major disruption to internet, phone signals, and power grids. And there's been a bunch of them leading up to this point, too, in the last couple weeks. So I've noticed that it's been affecting my ability to transmit. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory is one of the satellites they use for that. If you believe in NASA is not tricking us, I don't know, man. The warning has been put in effect by the Space Weather Prediction Center. It comes after a coronal mass ejection erupted from the sun yesterday evening. The authority, right? I like how they use that word. They use it wrong. That's not the proper use of that word. They're not an authority. They're not responsible for anything, man. They have no jurisdiction. If you want to learn about actual authority and how that actually is supposed to be employed in survival systems and things like that, then you can come to Patreon. We do training on that topic in the Able Men of Elohim series, which is a pretty fun series, talking about the responsibilities of having authority in a group. So if you're a leader, you might find that interesting. I'll share links below. The authority, quote unquote, says it will likely lead to immediate magnetic disturbances. A statement says, confidence in an Earth arrival component to this CME is good. Yeah, it was pointed straight at us. There's a professor oh, it's, I forget what university it is, Millersville State University or something, but Dr. Samantha Scove usually does pretty thorough, just straight up scientific observation type updates on solar weather. She doesn't go into the crazy stuff. That's our job. The guys that don't actually know all that stuff, that's our job to go into the crazy end. She's not allowed to do that because she's a scientist. So the rest of us will go off on the lunatic fringe and fill in all the what-if gaps, right? And however, timing and intensity are more uncertain. The watches represent potential based on our best analysis. So in a nutshell, guys, it was a large, long-duration coronal mass ejection, which can be specifically bad with power grids. And there's been some stuff in the last month that has caused issues with power grids trying to balance out. And the computers are just can't really keep on top of it on a few different systems over the world. I don't know if you've seen that. And so we shall see. It seems like very possible it'll disrupt electronics. But what about your mind? What about your brain? What about your biology, your circadian rhythms? Okay. So let's define some terms. A solar flare, guys, is a sudden burst of radiation, right, from the sun. It's energetic particles from the Earth's surface. They're classified like, a really big one is X class or an M class, I think, is the next one below that. But a flare is not always represented like by a corresponding similar size or proportion to the actual coronal mass ejection. That's the stuff that actually flies off the sun. The mass of the magnetic field, the ionosphere, the radiation environment, the magnetic, what do they call them, particles, energized, the actual plasma that's ejected into space is the CME. And that can be highly magnetically charged. There's different densities of it, velocities. It takes sometimes a day or two for it to get from there to here. Speed of light's really fast. Supposedly, the sun is 93 million miles away. Approximately, that's like 7 or 8 light minutes. So we see stuff quick, but the actual mass of the stuff flying at us might take a while, like, a day or 2 or 3 or 4 days, right? So the CME is not to be, they're in conjunction with solar flares sometimes, but you don't have to have a huge solar flare to have a massive CME. So it can be a small flare, but have a huge CME. For more on that, you want to study space science or astronomy or whatever. I did a little bit of that when I went to university, but I didn't go into it too far. But the documented biological and behavioral effects are what I find interesting. So there's heart rate variability that has been observed, and you can read this in even scientific journals where they log some of that. It can affect your blood pressure. I think 91 to 92% of people that have blood pressure sensitivities had and there's 2 different ways you can measure blood pressure, to my understanding, the way they did it there. And it was like 90% of people had a response to solar activity, like a big magnetic field hitting, or you know what I mean? So it does affect that. There's cardiovascular risks. A big deal is melatonin production. So your skull can act as an actual lens for incoming light or magnetism, particularly some of the near infrared is really focused by the density in your skull, and it channels it to specific parts of your anatomy in your brain. And it can stimulate certain glands to function more or less. It'll adjust the settings of how you roll, which is interesting because most of life's systems, like even this tree, has the advanced intelligence programmed in this tree blows what you call conventional artificial intelligence out of the water. This tree behind me is like bazillions of little tiny supercomputers, and they're actually programmed to interpret the environment, adjust the settings, think ahead, do predictive analysis based on past records through most of the DNA in creatures they're finding out is not just protein, encryption. It's having to do with actual settings and operating system parameters. It's not junk DNA. That was a stupid idea. I remember thinking that was stupid too in college. Junk DNA, just because you don't know what it's supposed to do doesn't mean it doesn't have a purpose. I guarantee you that if that extremely complex molecule is being produced, and it's a costly process, it's very, very complex. There's a reason for it, man, because they don't have a lot of room in there, you know. So, yeah, pretty interesting. But like animals and plants and all life, even bacteria, are incredibly set up with an operating system to take and interpret environmental factors, including light. And certain wavelengths of light will go into the skull and be channeled into certain different endocrine system components, like the pineal gland actually will, regulate melatonin, and so that'll affect your sleep patterns. So when solar weather happens, I know that for me, I am awake. And I'm like, man, I could not sleep the other night. What is going on? Just out of the blue. Like, I did everything right. I didn't watch the screen, an hour or two before bed. I didn't eat any chocolate or drink any coffee before bed, right? So, and it's consistent too. And then find out, oh, wow, there was a big burst of electromagnetic radiation at that same time when you woke up or whatever, right? And so it'll affect people because it triggers hormones. And your hormones regulate everything. So a little bit of solar radiation, depending on what kind, or magnetic field fluxes, will change. They're finding out. It's on the edge of biological research. It's not 100% understood yet. They're still trying to figure it out. But they definitely have a lot of studies linking melatonin suppression to disruption in Earth's magnetic fields. Yeah. And there's also, of course, radiation exposure, especially for astronauts, if they exist in the International Space Station. That's kind of dangerous for them. They got little pods they can climb into that are like little shield areas when it gets really bad. They have to go into like this little timeout capsule and wait it out. Or like pilots that fly over the Arctic. Like if you're flying to Russia, you shouldn't probably do that nowadays because you get in trouble, right? But if you're doing like a flight to Moscow, you're flying right over the North Pole. Or even like Northern Europe, a lot of those flights have to be diverted when there's solar activity like this because it's the pilots. They have a certain health threshold. They actually measure it. That's too much radiation. And so they have to reduce their exposure. And for those with sensitivities or pacemakers or cardiovascular issues, they're actually advised not to take polar flights when there's bad solar activity. So it definitely has been observed to create problems with the human body. So what are the mechanisms of that exactly? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that they don't really have pinned down all the way yet. But there's things called cryptochromes, which are tiny little light-sensitive proteins that are in the human body. And cryptochromes they're related in all different types of things. And even your eyeballs, right? Here's an interesting study that I got into recently. Your eyes, a small percentage of the photoreceptors in your eyes are for actual vision. That is interpreted by the occipital lobe to be vision input. Your eyes are the windows to your soul, is the old saying. Soul being the nefesh or the hashamat, or what's the word? The neshamat, right? In ancient writings, basically being the life force. And so the ancients identified through, I think, talking to like the source of life probably at one point, and they were told how they're built because we're engineered, I don't know if you know that, but like your hormone regulation system controls all your metabolism, your respiration, all sorts of stuff is controlled by that. And so light coming into your eyeballs from the sun actually affects your hormone load throughout the day. And you can take your melatonin pills to go to sleep, but you're skipping like 50 metabolic pathways to do it artificially that would happen if you just went outside and got away from TV screens. Or artificial light bulbs are terrible for your entire endocrine system. not just your sleep patterns, but terrible for your adrenaline. Even, they're linking diabetes problems to the improper lighting, because your eyeballs are the window to your metabolism, and your eyeballs are the window to a huge amount of hormone regulation, because those photoreceptors that are in your eyes, a huge amount of them, regulate all the other stuff. And of course it would. Of course it would. Your car has the ability to detect air density and oxygen so that it can adjust the burn in the engine, right? So it can adjust the oxygen to fuel flow. In a fuel-injected modern car, they've been doing that forever. And like like your lights come on when it's dark out. How much more stuff is inside you that's automatically regulated by, okay, what time is it? What season is it? What's the angle and wavelength of the sunlight on the horizon, right? So if you get different times of year, the sun is coming at a different angle, your body interprets that and regulates the settings for, right, it's winter's coming because the sun is now lower based on the last few rhythm cycles. We need to adjust to get fatter for the winter, right? So that's actually all true. Like the rut cycles in deer, all regulated by incoming light in the eyeballs. We knew this forever. Like deer get frisky when the sunlight is right. Or even the moonlight. Talking about this the other night with some friends, and I'll expound on this more probably on the Patreon post. I don't want to get too off in the weeds here publicly. Talking about the moonlight, if you work at nursing homes, insane asylums, or prisons, or cops, or school teachers, full moons, it really throws off behavior patterns. So there's behavioral links too. Mood disorders have been linked to, what do they call it? There's statistical correlation. They can't find the exact causation, but there's statistical correlation of all sorts of mood disorders to lunar cycles, but also sun cycles. And even in ancient mythology and ancient history, aurora borealis has been linked with crime and war and all sorts of bad stuff that can happen, because if it's messing with people's hormones, all at the same time just gets slammed. And it adjusts your hormones and your sleep and everything. It does cause a little bit of a social train crash in history when they're bad enough. And increased seizure activity can happen. Of course, sleep disruption, but there's all sorts of stuff that happens there. But these cryptochromes are in the proteins, actually, and they are light-sensitive proteins, and animals have them, and it's involved in magnetoreception effectively in the body, and circadian rhythms and all that. Also, there's magnetic crystals in the brain, too. Your brain is a supercomputer, but it has all sorts of little crystals that you can look at a microscope. There's different shapes to them that can accept different radio waves. And so microscopic magnetic particles, there's crystals that can not only take in radio waves, but there's also magnetic ones too. Because, radio is electromagnetic, right? So electric and magnetic, that's what light is, right? But all sorts of stuff could theoretically act as biological compasses. Other things can be in flux on how you receive input into the brain. Maybe I'll share this one. I think I talked about this on Patreon more. I'll just mention it now. I think that was last month. We talked about that in great. We have the long form discussions over there all the time on this kind of stuff. But the human body produces near infrared light because of your heat. That's why thermal scopes work. Like we've been reviewing some thermal optics. And the human body producing light actually is designed to be focused by the shape of the skull as a lens to certain parts of the brain that stimulate regenerative healing processes that they're linking huge, amazing results to in fields of what are something like Parkinson's disease, dementia, across the board, all kinds of irreversible diseases have been having crazy effects by finding out that the right near infrared light going into a human for the right amount of time per day because we're like in concrete buildings and steel buildings and houses, and we're, underground half the time in front of a screen. So that you miss out on those opportunities to actually heal. And we're not social as we used to be. Everyone's off in their own corner of their house with their own little screen, Nintendo game stuff. But they're finding out that human contact, you know why a baby's crying and wants to be held by mama and it stops crying? There's all sorts of reasons the baby likes mama. One of them might be that, because if mama's emitting the right light frequency, and there's even skin-to-skin contact with newborn babies to mama, to where they're like, it's like Bluetooth. It's like calibrating the baby. Mama and baby are like synchronizing. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, man. But like just the electromagnetic emitting of infrared light with humans who like, mama and papa, go to sleep together or whatever. And they heal each other because they're next to someone else. And that light is focusing in here, stimulating the parts of the brains that, oh, you're with humans. That means you need to actually heal and survive, because you're part of a social network structure, and humans are designed to support each other in a tight-knit social structure. Therefore, if you're around humans, you have a responsibility. Biologically, it triggers the ability to heal faster. Isn't that something? And people can feel that too. That's why a hug feels so nice. Did you guys think this would... Do you guys want me to tell you what kit to buy to survive the solar flare? Is that what you were here for? Yeah, the solar flare survival kit. Hey, hold on. Let's start the video over, okay? Because we got to do this like other guys do this. Hold on. Let me read the title again of this news article I read to you. Breaking news, guys. Massive solar storm could wipe out the internet power grids tomorrow. You need to go to the sporting goods store immediately and buy survival food. Here's the link for my survival food, man. Also, you need to load those guns. It could be zombie hordes, people. Be afraid. We all need, what's the most crazy way I can type in the title to scare the most people so that the beast system likes it, because I am here participating in the negative feedback loop of humanity, and then it rewards me by giving me more clicks and likes. See, I could do that too, but we're not going to play that game. We'll just talk about what I think is interesting, which is how we are linked with everything that God put here for us as part of a system. And he put the sun and the moon to regulate the day and the night, but it's attached to us. So as the plants and the grass and the trees and the birds, and when your kid puts twigs in their mouth, you're like, hey, spit that yucky twig out. They're calibrating to their environment. Is Rex turning into a crazy old hippie guy? Yeah, maybe. So, there's that when that solar flare, when that CME is going to hit tonight, I'm going to be watching for it. I think that's beautiful. I love that stuff. I try to get a good picture of the aurora. And then tomorrow it's hitting heavy. Perfect timing too. Interesting timing on the coronal mass ejection arriving tomorrow. Because I had a preordained meeting where I actually am commanded to not go to work tomorrow. Did you guys know that? I actually have orders not to go to work tomorrow. So I find the timing interesting. And then you look at the theme of the reason I was told not to go to work tomorrow and correlate that with, it happens too every year. Very, very interesting. I notice stuff like that. I don't know if you guys do. More of that. We'll talk more about that on Patreon. Okay. I don't want to scare the people here with what we're talking about, but there is a clock in motion. A clock in motion. And many things are on a schedule. The universe is on a schedule, a clock schedule. And if you know how to read the hands on the clock, all sorts of stuff ain't a surprise to you anymore. But that coronal mass ejection arriving tomorrow is going to be a strong one. It's going to be a beautiful light show in the sky I'm hoping for. Is arriving with perfect timing. In accordance with a schedule that was established thousands and thousands of years ago. Pretty cool, huh? For more on that, you can join us on Patreon. But I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, give you a little bit of a glimpse into some of the effects of solar radiation, and ask you guys, because I'm curious. I mean, even animals behave strange during solar storms like this. That's a thing that happens. There's cultural and historic observations of this leading to war, social agitation, etc. Have you guys noticed or correlated anything there? Do you notice that you act differently when the moon is out versus normal, or do you act differently? You know, there's a word called lunar tick for that reason. But have you noticed, like, anyone having a hard time sleeping when that flare actually went off? Because that's a real strong burst of different kinds of radiation that gets here immediately at the speed of light. I know a lot of people I talk to them are like, man, I just had a really bad day on this day. Like, just for whatever reason, I was just bent out of shape. That's interesting, because other people have correlated they had a bad day at that exact same time. And then you look, and yeah, I think that stuff affects us more than we realize as part of the environment, right? Just like the smell of flowers can affect you in a different way. Or just like, when the barometric pressure changes and it cools off and it gets kind of orange on the horizon, you know there's a storm coming. Yeah, you're wired to brace for impacts of various environmental incoming factors. Okay, so for more of this discussion, I'm going to talk more about this on Patreon. So I'm going to pause now, and then I'm going to start again, and we'll go into part 2 on Patreon. If you guys want to join us there, we do like 50 plus posts usually per month, exclusive post lessons. They're all part of a greater training program anyways, but we keep it very interesting. They're very much like this. We sit down and visit about the world, but it's all channeled and focused in a direction that is designed to help people be grounded in the reality of where we actually sit. What's the actual point of life? Don't miss out on key important things. Don't get into trouble, etc. It's a training program to how to interpret life in a way to where it's not boring. You can always smile, and you're not worried or scared of anything. Because if you have the proper perspective, man, we just went over Tesseract 5x5 2.0. It's a series we just did today. Talking about, I don't know if you guys ever actually heard the key to not being scared of anything is actual perspective and appreciation. And that key was given to us 3,500 years ago. Okay, so to join us in a more exclusive, gated community, catch up with us on Patreon. We'll continue the conversation there. Rex out.